So coming down, we get into this, which is just some like really kind of fun classic mechanical kind of physics and the expression of like these things, but also the kind of theory of them in a sense of like how we can use them as artists. So this is Alvin Lucier, who was the sound artist that we were, you know, might, yeah. It's like, am I totally off? Yeah, uh, so these are some classical mechanics and the kind of expression of them. And Alvin Lucier here does this beautiful sound piece that lasts for an hour that I was listening to while working on this slide lecture, and it was incredible. So it's really good background kind of meditative music also. Pendulum music here by Steve Reich, who was the other artist that I mentioned with the phase patterns in office hours, if you weren't there. And here we have another just really kind of actually pretty fantastic expression of analogs in how to learn from doing one thing in one way to how it expresses itself in other ways, and how we can even go about measuring things based on these sorts of principles that we see in other things. And I think it's a really interesting thing that's led to a lot of interesting discoveries, but also this video is kind of like steeped in some like 1950s science demonstrations. So it's really fun to just watch while you're, I don't know, knitting or something. We have some drawings here by Michael Faraday. Michael Faraday was the kind of inventor of the electric motor, but was a kind of magnetism, electromagnetism kind of scientist who also, you know, became a big part of visualizations of magnetic spheres, which we had never really done. So this is the importance of this in this assignment. So we've been thinking about like these sorts of invisible fields that exist around us and how we came about and ways of measuring them. We even measure lava flows in geology to give a sense of the age and the kind of cycle of our own planet's magnetic cycles I think it's every 230,000 years. And I know it's kind of inconsistent exactly. It has a kind of variance of plus or minus like 20,000 years. But this magnetic cycle of our own planet being kind of found in lava flows that are resembling these patterns. So it's led to a lot of understanding of ourselves and the age of our planet and how our planet actually works as well through these visualizations. So there's some magnetic fluid, and this is just like an example of maybe how you could explore the ways in which maybe the thing that you find to be interesting, how it expresses itself in different ways. And this is like very illustrative of that. Here, this is actually, I don't know how these images were produced, but I know that there's ways of people walking around and kind of picking up a spider web or a cobweb like underneath a black piece of paper. And I know that you can also do darkroom prints doing things like that, but these are, I think, more scanned and kind of vectorized things that were being studied, that they were discovering that they could really differentiate the type of spider by the pattern in which it like produces with its web. So visualizations of expressing things that we don't yet know, right? These sorts of things that we have in front of us, so we need to reverse engineer to pay attention to and to kind of explore. So Aspen Maze here is taking a picture of every leaf on a tree, and this is an excerpt kind of shot of a much larger installation where Aspen had, yeah, documented an entire tree. So this idea of visualizing something maybe in a reordered kind of fashion as a way to experience it in a new reality. And this is also just a visualization of a thing in kind of a 1-to-1 ratio, of a picture of a screen that is playing static on it, which is an experience that we don't have much anymore, and maybe you don't even have at all. But TV screens would play static on them. But this is actually like a live feed, and part of that static that is playing on an actual screen is electromagnetic radiation from the Big Bang. So 1% of a TV screen's like static is actually evidence of the Big Bang, a live feed of it. So onwards, this is one of my favorite astronauts of all time. Please watch this guy. He's super cool, and he does all these science experiments, and he also did like the live, like one of the first music videos in space, and it's a Bowie song. So, and this is an incredible video that you will just lose your mind about. Here we've got an artist who kind of thinking about like, well, what's a practical way for you to approach this assignment of visualizations? And I think there's even more artists that I didn't get on here that I wanted to show you that I think about as I'm showing this now, but that's always the case. So this is, I believe Jenny Odell. Yeah, Jenny Odell. And she goes through like specific places, and one of her, like a very important one of her works is every basketball court, in Manhattan. So kind of specific geographies and satellite views of places, and kind of isolating them maybe by kind of political or other demographic kind of ideas, right, could be expressed in these that start to build a new way of understanding something. And then also this way of maybe putting things next to each other that aren't usually next to each other. They're more spread out, so you don't see them like in relationship to one another. And that's an important thing when we start to compare things relative to one another. And so in that same vein, we have this I don't know what to call him exactly, but Dennis Wood is kind of, I don't know, he explored his own kind of neighborhood by wind chimes, by who put out pumpkins in Halloween, and kind of did all these interactive kinds of mapping projects that don't abide by the normal kind of guidelines or the normal structures that we have, and kind of like produce these maps that are pretty compelling, and it's a really good video there. So this is, in that same ways, the way in which we see a thing is this is the SDO satellite in the Solar Dynamics Observatory, and which is constantly monitoring the sun and transmitting data back to Earth. So it's a satellite project, and it's transmitting, but it's also taking pictures in all these different very specific wavelengths of light that really allow us to see the surface of the sun as a slide and see the kind of activities. So we can monitor all these levels of the stratospheres of the layers of the sun that allow us to understand its complexity and how it functions and acts over time. So even how do you view maybe one thing in many, many, many different ways that allow you to understand it in this new way, and then revisualize that projects that idea now, right? So Yeah, so I'm going to be doing a demonstration of these Clodney plates here and at the next office hours. And I'm going to probably throw in a couple more video artists here that are kind of doing some fun projects that I think are like ways for you to maybe interpret this. I don't know how you're going to interpret this, and I know that there's a lot of limitations right now, but I do hope that you can find some like unique ways to think about visualizing ideas as a way to maybe abstract them, as a way to reconsider them. And so I'm hoping this lecture has been good, and I'm also hoping you really watch this video. I'm not like saying that this is like some super eureka thing, but I think this David McCandless says some really important things, and really important for thinking about this project specifically. So please watch that video. And then I've got some like words on here just to read through and consider, like when we consider like what this visualization is and what visualizations are in general, right? As this idea of, and I'll just read them, why not? A mediation, a translation, an interpretation, a surrogate, a proxy, a second reader, a representation, a ghost, a replica, a forgery, a clone, a fake, an analog, a demonstration, a simulation, or a simulacra. So make sure you get into, make sure you definitely get into the philosopher kind of our week, Jean Baudrillard, and please try to watch as much of that content as you can. And if you really can, get into the Pervert's Guide to Ideology, because it's super supplemental material to the kind of conversation as well. I'm going to leave you with this image, which is one of my favorite images by Hubble Space Telescope. And this is an image that I think has about 12 different wavelengths of light that are being compiled together. But hundreds of, if not thousands, and probably thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, I'm so obnoxious, I'm sorry, of photographs that build this picture that's called Pillars of Creation, which is a nebula in outer space. So this is clusters of heat, energy, and gas kind of swirling together and building new suns and new galaxies, or new solar systems. So yeah, I hope you're doing well, and I hope this reaches you well, and reach out with questions, and I'm sure you have a lot of them. Peace.